Welcome back to our special Sufi episode. As we continue this special on Sufi mysticism, we're now joined by Michael Kagan, an entrepreneur, inventor, producer, poet, artist, storyteller, teacher, and of Jewish and Sufi wisdom, as well as an author. We're happy to have you, a true Renaissance man, here in the studio. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you again.
You have a unique story. Here you are, an Orthodox Jew, married, kids, grandchildren, wearing a kippah, living in Jerusalem. Explain how you found Sufism and how it dovetails Judaism.
So it goes back about 20 years ago. I was praying, as people do, and I suddenly had an experience of the infinitude of God. I suddenly had a realization, coming from my background as a scientist, but also from my background as having had spiritual experiences, that God is everything. Now, that may sound strange that God is everything, isn't that obvious? But God is everything, which means that you are an expression of God. The table is an expression of God. I'm an expression. God is not up, not down, not inside, not a little spark, everything. And that confused me, terribly confused me. I stepped out of my prayer. I was dizzy. I needed to sit down. I didn't know what to do. And I consulted with my rabbi, my teacher, Reb Zalman Shechter Shalomi, Zichron Livracha, and I said, what do I do with that? He gave a smile, and he says, you need to visit this sheikh, a Sufi sheikh.
Wow.
He'll have the answer for you.
Wow.
And I did, and I told of my experience, and this sheikh listened, and he says, I'm going to initiate you as a Sufi. And I began to read up on Ibn al-Arabi, and he was one of the great Sufi masters, and his whole thing was, Ein od milvado, there is nothing but God. There is nothing but God. And so the window opened, the door opened, and I walked through and started to learn about Ibn al-Arabi, about Sufism. When you ascend and have a religious experience, well, you can't have two religious experiences. I mean, our religious experiences are informed by who we are and our background and our religion. But when you get to a certain point, it's all one.
It's above.
It's above, and that's the umbrella.
Created
right.
Three religions. Now let's get to the book that you channeled, that you've called God's Prayer. It literally came to you.
Yes.
God spoke to you and said, get a pencil, and you're like, what?
Whoa.
And then your hand just came up with this book, which is brilliant. So explain briefly the experience, and then I want to ask you a few specific questions about the book.
It was very strange. It had never happened to me before, I have to admit. I wasn't on LSD, I wasn't tripping, I had my tefillin on, and I was davening at home, and this voice came to me and said, start writing. I said, stop interrupting, I'm praying. So start writing, and I haven't written in ages. I type, right? It says write. So I had to find a pencil, I had to find my children's machberot exercise books, and for 3 days I wrote almost non-stop. Just writing. I had to stop when the kids came home.
You know, it's an easy book to read. I read it very quickly. Thank you for giving it to me in advance. It really is done in a simple way, but it really is, you get the feeling that God is speaking to us as a father, talking to three adolescents. You know, we're Jews, Christians, Muslims, man, and then ending and bringing full circle to the woman. Explain this message that we all got to get our blank together, essentially.
Well, I mentioned in the beginning, it's called God's Prayer, but the experience I had, and you know, I get emotional just reminding myself of this, is being in front of the Holy Presence, and God is crying, right? Which, you know, God is crying. And I asked, why are you crying? God says, look what you're doing to my beautiful creation. Like, that wasn't what it's meant to be like. And I gave you all these tools, like toolboxes. There was one to the Jews, and, you know, we did okay with that, but it needed more. So another one to the Christians, and then there are the Muslims, and then the Buddhists, and then the Hindus, and other religions around the world. And inside the toolbox are tools to help fix the world. that's what you've got. And sometimes you need to borrow tools. Mm-hmm. Can I borrow your hammer? Can you? Yeah, I've got one of these. And that was the idea. And for centuries and centuries, you've been killing each other and abusing each other and abusing the planet and not understanding the message that you're here to work together, different facets, different directions, different tools, but that's what it's about. And God cries at the state of the world. You know, recently I said to someone exactly what I told you, God cries, and they said, I'm not surprised. Like, we're really messing up, big time. And part of the message of the book is to religions to get their act together.
And grow up.
And grow up. The book just came out in Hebrew. This is actually part of the launch, and I thank you for it. It's come out in German. It's been read by people all over the world. Somebody wrote an opera around it, and other people have composed music around it. I'm very embarrassed by it in that sense.
But God's in charge, not us. We're just vessels of Him saying, this is your assignment.
Just doing my job.
Michael, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your journey. An amazing book, which is a must-read for everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.